My name is Jack McNaboe. I'm chairman of Manalapan Township Planning Board.
The program you're about to watch is a planning board meeting. The Manalapan Township Planning Board is responsible for overseeing new businesses that come to Manalapan, as well as any current businesses or developments that want to expand.
The Manalapan Planning Board consists of 9 regular members, 2 alternate members, along with legal representation, our planner, engineer, and our board secretary.
Our meetings are open to the public and occur on the 2nd and 4th Thursday of each month. Meetings start at 8 p.m. and take place in the Manalapan Township Municipal Center courtroom. Members of the public are welcome to attend, and as you'll see, members of the public are invited to speak at each meeting with any concerns they might have. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching. I'm going to call a meeting to order. Pursuant to Section 5 of the Open Public Meeting Act, notice of this meeting of the Manalapan Township Planning Board was and has been advertised in the Asbury Park Press. A copy of that notice was posted on a bulletin board where public notices are displayed in the municipal building. In addition, a copy of this notice is and has been available to the public and is on file in the office of the municipal clerk. Accordingly, this meeting is deemed to be in compliance with the Open Public Meeting Act. Please stand and salute the flag.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Never did that.
I'm sure they got that. Mr. Pine, if we can get a roll call, please.
Mr. Cohen.
Here.
Black. Chief Hogan.
Present.
Mr. Eisner. Chairman McNaboe.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Holland.
Here.
Committeeman Green.
Here.
Mr. Mendez.
Here.
Mr. Niebling. Mr. Aronson.
Here.
Mr. Pine is present.
Thank you. Mr. Kuchar, if we swear in our professionals, please.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Richard Kramer, professional planner with T&M Associates.
Greg Valesi, engineer, CME Associates.
The Township of Manalapan Television Network will be videotaping this meeting of the Planning Board for rebroadcast on MTTN Channel 77 and on Cablevision and Channel 42 on Verizon Fios. By attending this meeting, attendees acknowledge this recording and agree to allow their images to be broadcast on MTTN and Verizon Fios. All attendees and participants agree to conduct themselves in a manner appropriate for a public gathering. Inappropriate behavior or gatherings creating a disturbance or safety hazard are prohibited inside this building. Individual speakers should be advised that no right of privacy protects a citizen's public comments made in a public forum. Any statement made by a member of the public to promote or alter public opinion about a candidate for political office, political party, or interest groups are inappropriate and in violation of MTTN broadcast policies. Accordingly, all participants bear responsibility for their own statements and commentary. Please note, application PFS 1206, Shrigg LLC will not be heard tonight due to inadequate notice. The applicant will re-notice with a new hearing date of April 12th, 2012. Anyone's here for that application, that will not be heard tonight. Resolution for memorialization of the master plan. We are missing several people tonight. Ms. Kuchara, would you explain real fast what the voting procedure will be on the 5 that voted in favor?
Yeah, the only members of the board that are eligible to vote on the resolution are those who voted to adopt the resolution. I think only 2 are here tonight.
2 are here.
The yes votes were Mr. Cohn, Ms. Quack, Mr. Hogan, Mr. Eisner, and Mr. Niebling. The law permits, just one person, if you want, to vote on the resolution. It is a resolution of some import, so if the board wanted to carry it to make sure that everyone who voted in favor of it's okay with the content of the resolution, it's within the board's prerogative.
Mm-hmm. With the board members, anybody have an objection to carrying it to the next meeting so that the majority can vote, will vote? Okay, so resolution of memorialization and master plan will be carried to our next meeting. Eleanor, that meeting will be
April
the
12th.
April 12th meeting, right? PCR 1211 resolution, Western Monmouth Utilities Authority, Hawken Road Pump Station Improvement. Everybody see the resolution in their package? Anybody have? Did you get it? Oh, I didn't know if you were looking over as if you didn't. Everyone get a chance to read through it? Anybody have any questions? Like to make a motion, anything?
Mr. Chairman, for the record, I did watch the broadcast of our last meeting. I couldn't make it. I had another engagement. Eleanor, I just need to sign your paperwork when you have the opportunity. But I did see it in whole. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll move the resolution.
Okay. We have a motion from the Deputy Mayor. Do I have a second on that?
Second.
Lenny, you second? Second. All right, take a vote on this. Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Chief Hogan?
Yes.
Kevin McNamara?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Howell?
Yes.
Committeeman Green?
Yes.
Mr. Mendez?
Yes.
Mr. Aronson? Yes.
Thank you. PFS 0803A resolution, Ciosa Development LLC, Craig Road. Jerry has a few words to say to us. Nothing?
I think that we just here to see that everything was taken care of from the point of view of their review of the traffic and a minor change that I think was done by Ron. That's all. Nothing for
Mr.
me to
Chairman,
say.
if I could, if you recall at the last meeting, the board had asked me if I was comfortable with the traffic report. We had only gotten the traffic report the day of the meeting, so we went back and looked at the report. We have no problems with it from a traffic and engineering standpoint. We did make some recommendations, which we just issued in a report that we handed out to you, because the application had changed relative to the bank parking, and because there were some inconsistencies, because the report was revised from the original report that accompanied the site plan, that they revised the report to make it consistent with the testimony, and that could be a condition of the approval. So we are okay with it.
We will do that.
Anybody else have any comments? Anybody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion. In favor.
I'll second.
Yes.
Chief Hogan?
Yes.
Kevin McNamara?
Yes?
Deputy Mayor Howell?
Yes.
Committeeman Green?
Yes.
Mr. Mendez?
Yes.
Mr. Aronson? Yes.
Thank you. PAS 1001A, Manalapan Affordable Housing Amended Site Plan. While they get set up, I just want to remind anyone that they had a chance to look at the, or watch the TV. Some of us were not that terrific at keeping the mics on and talking close to them. So those that weren't, just make sure you stay close to the mic so that everybody could hear this. You'll have to watch it as you walk by, you know, as long as you have a mic with you. At the desk, you came across fine.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. David Oberlander for Manalapan Affordable Housing, LLC. As the board's aware, this hearing started last month, or last meeting, 2 weeks ago. We presented our witnesses. We're seeking an amended site plan approval with really 3 elements. One involves the installation of a sign, which requires variance relief. One involves the deletion of a portion of a sidewalk. And the third element involves installation of a fence in the wetlands as part of the remediation project. With regard to the sign, I think that, I don't recall hearing any objection on that last time. I don't know whether there's any discussion on that, or whether there's any members of the public that are here to discuss that. But, our suggestion would be to just, to vote on these one at a time, and that seems to be one that could get out of the way if the board's receptive to that, to doing a vote early. But again, I know there are members of the public out here, so we'll have to see if they want.
Mr. Chair, I don't have a problem voting on each discrete item, but I would wait till the conclusion of all the testimony to do that.
That's fine.
Did I hear you say your testimony was done at the end of the last? Or
Well, we're here to answer board questions, and we're going to supplement it a little bit.
But as far as your presentation, you're complete?
Well, we're going to respond. I'm going to be presenting some testimony for some follow-up on at least one of the issues, and possibly two. The first element is the sign. The second element is the sidewalk. And again, we believe that the proofs we presented last time justify elimination of the sidewalk based on our inability to get the DEP general permit for the sidewalk as originally proposed, and based also on the fact that there's going to be virtually no anticipated usage. However, we do understand, and we heard the board's desire to have sidewalks there, so my client has developed an alternative proposal that we'll present tonight, and we'll construct that alternative if we can get it approved by the county and DEP. If we can't get both of those approvals, then again, we're back to the fact that our sidewalk would have to stop at the edge of the transition area, because we would not have permits to go farther than that. And Mr. Lang will be explaining that in more detail. The last element of the relief we're seeking tonight is the fence as part of the remediation project. And our environmental witness did testify last time, Mr. Paul. And as we were leaving, we were given a copy of a report submitted by the Township's LSRP, Excel Environmental Resources, Inc., which reviewed our site plan approval. We were, I guess, not surprised to see that it really agreed with our LSRP, and that report found that our plan was consistent with the Remedial Action Workplace Plan and with NJDEP regulations with regard to protectiveness to human health and the environment. I think the issue is really kind of narrow here, as I know you've discussed in prior hearings, and as your solicitor has correctly instructed you, and you even found in your preliminary resolution, that this board really can't get into the ins and outs of the remediation project. That's within the jurisdiction of DEP. We're only here tonight to discuss the site plan. DEP has approved the fence, so the fence is going to be there. We think the fence complies with your ordinance. And we certainly, would not get into the merits of the decisions made in connection with the remediation process. Your town council is welcome to get involved with that to the extent it can. I know it's hired the LSRP. So if there are any questions about the fence, about the site plan issues, the height, color, those kind of traditional site plan issues, conformance with the zoning ordinance, we'd be happy to discuss them. Mr. Lang is here to do that also. So if there's nothing else further of a preliminary nature, I'd like to ask Mr. Lang.
Okay.
Come up, please.
Okay, Mr. Lang, you remain under oath. But just, if you could just put your name on the record so we have it on the tape.
Certainly. Again, Jeremy Lang, Lange.
Mr. Lang, you're the same witness who testified here at the first hearing, is that correct?
That's correct.
And can you tell us what the thinking is of the applicant with respect to the sidewalk at this point?
Certainly. After the last hearing, we went back and looked at some different alternatives for accomplishing what the board, or at least what our understanding of the board's desire was to have pedestrian connectivity along the frontage, notwithstanding, whether or not it's absolutely necessary. So what we did is went back and looked at both the county standards and the NJDP standards and saw if there was another way that we could possibly accomplish that without creating as much hardship as a traditional sidewalk would. We were able to find what we believe is an excellent solution to do that. There is a permit known as a GP-17 under the freshwater wetland rules that allows for boardwalks to be constructed through wetland areas. These are commonly used in parks and other ecological trails, things like this. So the concept of a boardwalk through a wetland is not at all foreign or even unusual. These can be done in a manner that is completely ADA compliant, so it would meet all the functionality and all the regulatory thresholds of a sidewalk, but do it in a manner that would be elevated above the wetland, such that it would not have a substantial impact on the wetland. There's a couple of advantages of this approach. One is that because of the fact it's elevated, it would not be impacted by stormwater discharge from the county highway. Two, a boardwalk of this nature would allow us to keep what I'll call the sidewalk, although it would be physically a boardwalk, in the original alignment. In other words, the alignment that was approved by this board on the site plan, which is consistent with the county's preferred location of sidewalks relative to their right-of-way line. The county itself and their scenic roadway standards, actually on scenic roadways, although this is not designated formally as a scenic roadway, has many of the attributes of a scenic roadway. Actually encourages alternatives to sidewalk, and actually on scenic roadways they prefer not to have white concrete sidewalk. So this would certainly be in keeping with that standard, and we believe with the township's endorsement, the county would also approve this. So our plan A, if you will be to construct the traditional sidewalk outside of the wetlands and wetland transition area, and then transition that into a boardwalk construction, keeping again on the same original approved alignment until we exit the transition area on the other side, and then go back to the concrete sidewalk to the limits previously approved. If for some reason, although we don't expect this, if for some reason the DEP were to object to that, the plan B, if you will, would be a similar approach, but it would be moving the sidewalk to the other location that we were discussing, which is approximately 4 feet off the curb line, or what would be the curb line of the county roadway. And where we cross that culvert that we had spoke about last time, we would boardwalk or bridge that portion of the crossing, which would be a much shorter segment. The real difference being it would impact less freshwater wetlands. However, we believe that Plan A is well within the general permit guidelines and is approvable, but we wanted to have a backup plan in the event the DEP felt strongly in the other way. So I'll just pause here if there's any questions from the board on that, or...
Yeah, explain the boardwalk. What do you envision the boardwalk? What is it made out of? Materials?
It would be made out of some kind of a treated lumber, so it wouldn't be susceptible to insects and rot, that type of thing. It would have some kind of non-slip surface on it that would be a requirement for the accessibility. It would have railings on it that would comply with the American Disabilities Act and the New Jersey Barrier-Free Subcode. So that would be wheelchair accessible. It would prevent wheelchairs from going off any edge, or children, or frankly anybody having a problem with the elevated nature of it. It would not be significantly elevated. We're talking, maybe a foot, 2 feet, that order of magnitude. Of course, at the heart of the wetlands would be where it's elevated the most, and then that would taper off as you exited the wetlands on either side. The idea being to keep the boardwalk as level as possible, so we have a minimal or no slope on it to be maximize the accessibility.
Anybody else? Go ahead.
This is more just a comment. I like the idea of a boardwalk, but my concern is 300 feet of boardwalk is going to become an attraction for young people. I believe that they'll be hanging out there.
It's only 130 inside.
I think it's approximately 130 some odd feet, although that's kind of immaterial to your comment that, certainly it's a potential that it would be a place for congregation. One of the things that to remember is that it is right on a county road frontage, though, so it is someplace that's not hidden. It is, going to be an easily visible location, easily patrolled. You'll have the management, of course, at this community will also have an interest in, watching that area, as well as obviously your police force is relatively close to that location. So yeah, that's certainly a possibility, although I don't think the boardwalk exacerbates that too much. Sidewalk in the same location, even if we extended the culvert and put the fill that we discussed last time, you would still have an area through there where people could congregate. Does the boardwalk make that significantly more attractive? Maybe in a de minimis fashion it does, but I don't think it's significantly more attractive than the sidewalk area would have been.
Just go Jack, I guess, one more thing to say.
Can we just keep it down, folks? It's picking up into the mics. Thank you.
I would just like the board to consider that, as the applicant has stated, that this is a sidewalk to nowhere. It's private lots where the sidewalk ends, so it'll never be developed. And I know the people will never put the sidewalk in. We have an opportunity to get a sidewalk put in someplace else in the township. They're going to provide into our sidewalk fund. So this is only my opinion, but I'd like you to consider that.
Good point.
Mr. Lang, rather than using a treated lumber, why not use a Trex-type product, a synthetic product lasts a lot longer, and if you wouldn't have any objection to that, a composite product such as Trex Deck or one of those composites, I would much prefer, if you're going to go this route, if the board approves it, I'd much prefer that to a treated wood product.
The Trex tends to be slipperier. It's a composite. It's essentially plastic. So plastic just inherently, when wet, is much slipperier. So it is harder to maintain the non-slip surface on the Trex surface. So that would be my concern, where a treated lumber it definitely has just naturally, because of the grain of the wood, the natural variations in the surface, is a lot more slip resistant. Plus, it will absorb water to some degree. It doesn't, like on a countertop, you'll get the water bubbling up. That wouldn't happen on a wooden surface. It soaks in and through. So it's definitely a better surface in terms of that, and also in terms of snow and ice melt, because you get a little more air circulation through the wood grain. Ice will tend to melt faster on a wood surface than it will on a Trex surface. So I certainly understand your comment in terms of longevity, but with today's treated wood products, they have significant life cycle. So I don't think you're trading off too much there, and you certainly have a better non-slip surface when using a wood product.
And this treated wood surface would be maintained by your applicant, the ownership of the...
It's on our property. Yeah, yes, it's a rental complex, so they're going to remain the owners.
Complex maintenance program. Right.
Anybody else?
Just one, Mr. Chairman, the grounds underneath it, the area where those wetlands are, you guys be maintaining that and keeping it cut so it doesn't come up to the top of the surface and
right. That would really be the same either way, because that overgrowth could happen with a concrete sidewalk as well. So, but the answer is yes.
Anyone else? You have something to say, Greg?
Well, my question was going to be ownership, and they answered that. I think that as long as the boardwalk, there's standards that will allow it to comply with that general permit that Mr. Lang spoke of, it seems like it's permittable to me. I think it's a good alternative considering what they're up against.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody?
I would emphasize, we agree with Mr. Holland that it would seem like it makes more sense for us to make the contribution and for you to build the sidewalk someplace where school kids are walking in the street or something like that. But it's totally up to the board. We'll do either one. It's your choice.
We will be taking that up when we get to the point of which way to go with it. See nothing from here? What else you have?
I mean, again, we can answer questions about the fence. If the board has more questions, in terms of the site plan issues of the fence. But we presented our basic testimony last time, I believe.
We'd like to leave Mr. Paul. I know I left him with an open-ended question when he left, and I'm kind of ready to hear what you have to say there. The open-ended question saying, why aren't we removing this? Even if you read through this with our LSRP, it says and/or. There's a slash there. In other words, they can go with each one. I'm just curious, have we exhausted all possibilities of why we're not removing the...
He did. I mean, again, we're kind of reluctant to get into the ins and outs because that's a decision within DEP's jurisdiction. But Mr. Paul did answer that last time, and he indicated that because of the way that it's taken out, it would cause more damage to the wetlands area than originally anticipated for the type of removal that would be needed. And to minimize damage to the wetlands area, they would use this to deed restrict the area and put up the fencing.
Mr. Chairman, as I recall, no one questioned the LSRP because he rushed through the last 20 minutes of the meeting, and then we adjourned.
He didn't rush through anything, sir.
So our professionals haven't asked any questions to the LSRP, and you essentially just tried to answer a question for him when he's sitting in the front row.
I said what he said last time.
Okay. Well, we'd like to try the questions
That's
again.
okay.
I'd like to...
He testified last time. He's here tonight. He can testify again.
I'd like to know, you say it would be it would do more damage to the wetlands to remove. I'd like to know what has to be done to remove the contaminated soil there.
Mr. Chair,
how extensive the removal is going to be.
Mr. Paul is going to get up, and he's going to testify to that.
And again, I would note that that's the issue of whether we put up a fence or whether we remove is not an issue for the planning board. The issue for the planning board, because we're authorized by DEP to put up the fence. So the issue for the planning board are site plan aspects of the fence, not to decide whether they agree or disagree with the applicant's determination to use the fence. That's something that you know, is a DEP issue, not a site plan issue.
But with all due respect, the first time that the testimony was given, it was we were going to remove all the soils. They were going down, and oh, by the way, we may have to put up a fence. So it's
Right.
sort of and if you remember, it was a very close up here as far as getting it. Now, I'm not saying it sways, but all of a sudden, now you have, the fence is going up.
Yeah.
Personally, I'll just speak, you put a 6-foot-high fence in a backyard, you just challenged every 8, 9, and 10-year-old boy to try to get over that fence, regardless how many red signs you put on it. So from that standpoint, I would just like to know why we're not removing the soil. And it's a question. If you don't think I have grounds to ask it, I feel I do, and I'm going to ask the question. Sir? Okay.
Mr. Paul, you testified at the last hearing, is that correct?
You remain under oath.
Okay. To remove the remaining soil, as I said before, we got to a point of where we would end up doing much more damage to the wetlands. We've removed as much as we can using hand implements. At this point, what we have are very low levels of the PCBs remaining, spread out through these two areas, which total together about 1.5 acres. One of the areas is a little less than 1 acre, and the other area is a little more than half an acre. To go in there and remove the remaining soil in these two areas would require, at this point, more heavy machinery. It would cause damage to the vegetation. We'd have to lower the soil profile even more. Roots would become exposed, and we'd probably have to physically take down some of the mature trees that are in those areas. So it was my judgment that to be protective, which is my charge under the Site Remediation Reform Act, to be protective of human health, safety, and the environment, this was my opinion that it was a remediation technique that met those goals of being protective of human health, safety, and the environment.
When we heard from you the last time, you did say that you were removing the PCBs. There were several compounds that were in there. Am I correct in that?
Yes.
If you just go back to what you said originally when we spoke, the PCBs were being removed.
Correct.
Okay, and now...
What we've removed is we had to remove PCBs down to the residential standard of 0.2 milligrams per kilogram. We're permitted to keep under an engineering control, like a fence or a cap on the remainder of the site, up to 10 milligrams per kilogram. What I said earlier also is that the low levels that are remaining there are pretty not diverse, but spread out throughout these areas. And again, the damage to the wetlands and the vegetation was, in my opinion, not worth the diminishing returns we'd get from continuing to try to get the last bit out. What we have there are average concentrations of less than 1 milligram per kilogram.
So is that less than 10% of the concentration that you would be allowed to maintain on the site?
Correct.
Under DEP regulations?
Correct.
Anybody have anything?
I have a couple of, just to comment on this. Originally, in the original resolution of, it was memorialized June 9th, he said that at the time, Mr. Paul said the applicant was proposing fencing at the time around the expected candidates to extend and move by hand. Any use of fence would require an amended site plan, which is what you're here to do now, amended site plan. Doesn't say that we have to accept the amended site plan. To me, I don't know why you say it has to be removed by heavy equipment. Why can't you remove it by hand like you did the rest of the soils?
Well, again, because I didn't say heavy equipment, I said some equipment. By bringing in equipment even if it's small loaders or whatnot, to remove the dirt. We're talking about, again, an acre and a half total combined. We'd have to remove some of the underbrush to get in there. We'd have to remove maybe some of the trees themselves. And again, is it possible to do? Anything is possible to do. I mean, we could get in there. At the end of the day, there would be damage, significant damage to the wetlands.
But that can be repaired.
Well, you could replant the wetlands, but it's not the same as having a 50 or 75-year-old forest that's there.
Have you got documented which trees will be affected?
No,
So how do you know?
because my men have been in there for months at a time, and I
You haven't presented anything to us to show that this particular tree with a caliber of 12 inches is going to go down.
Sir, again,
Second
the
of all-
decision of whether or not to
Not
use the
finished.
fence or not
Counsel, I'm
is not
finished.
here tonight.
Counsel,
Is
let
not.
me respond, please. The other thing that concerns me, Mr. Paul, is this area is right next to a detention basin. So I don't know, is there some chance of migration of these PCBs that you're going to leave into the detention basin through runoff or whatever, but you're very close to a detention basin there. So I'm further concerned. Also, I think the chairman has an excellent point. This 6-foot fence with a sign isn't going to keep anybody out. And I think it's a greater hazard to the health and welfare of people by leaving this PCB is in place rather than removing them. I don't buy your argument in your...
I can tell you from experience on another project here in Metuchen, where we used the exact same technique, a fence with a sign around an area where contamination was left. It was within a garden apartment complex, very similar to this, and it's been there for almost 2 years now, and there's been no issues whatsoever, as far as I'm aware of.
Excuse me, do you have a map of that area? Can you throw that up on the board so you can point that out again?
Yes.
There was an exhibit?
Yeah.
Your exhibit, please? Thank you.
Excuse me, can you please take the microphone? Thank you.
This is Exhibit A9 from the last hearing, and you can see that there are 2 areas demarcated by pink or red lines. And then what I call the northern area is about .822 acres, and we have .74 acres here on the east side. Those are the 2 areas.
And would you just point to where the wetlands area starts, as the buildings aren't on there yet?
Correct. The wetlands is the darker dashed line there.
Okay, so it's right at just at the start?
Well, yes, because if you remember from the plan and my previous testimony, within the site, we have a permit to do the capping, and that was, yeah, right.
So we're not deep into the wetlands, we're at the edge of the wetlands?
We're at the edge of the wetlands.
Thank you.
I have a question for Mr. Paul. If this were your property, and you had children living on this property, would you be comfortable with this, having your children this close to a fenced-in area that is a challenge to them to get into with different types of chemical composition there?
Yes.
How come I knew you were going to say that?
And, Mr. Chairman, what's the height of the fence and what's the construction of the fence?
It's a 6-foot-high chain link fence.
Why wouldn't we go 8? And what's the cap of it? Is there a way for them to just climb over and jump right in?
Yeah. No, there's no cap on the top, and 6 feet is the size of the fence or the height of the fence we've used in other projects, and it's a standard fence height that seems to be protective of keeping people away.
And I would also add that that's what's permitted under your ordinance.
Yeah, I asked Richard that.
Right.
Just making sure.
Mr.
Anybody
Chair?
have anything?
Mr. While we were... Oh, sorry, Chief, go ahead.
I just had a question, Mr. Paul. What is the percentage that is acceptable under the law DEP without having the fence and without having that restricted area contaminated soils pinned up all over those fences?
0.2 milligrams per kilogram.
0.2. And, thank you.
So the quick math is it's 5...
Gujaro, you had...
Sure, yeah, I've got,
Correct?
What I said was, we can keep within the fenced or capped area up to 10 parts per million. The average concentration within these two fenced areas is about, in one area, it's about 0.5 parts per million, or milligrams per kilogram, and in the other area, it's about 0.9 milligrams per kilogram.
But it is significantly higher than what would be allowed not fenced.
Well, right, that's the purpose of the fence.
Understood.
That's why there's an engineering control.
We're just saying it's significantly higher.
Mr. Cucchiaro? Ed. Let Mr. Cucchiaro speak, please. Ed.
I just want to make it clear, I'm against the fence. If anybody has any issue with it, I don't want to see a fence there. I want to see all the contamination removed. Just a simple statement. I hope other members of the board feel like I feel.
Thank you. One more time.
okay. We're talking about perhaps the attractive nuisance of the fence, the necessity of the fence is, maybe I missed it, I didn't hear the design of the fence, how it would, is there a design that the fence has that, that would discourage or prevent climbing?
It's a 6-foot-high chain link fence. There's going to be, can't think of the name of the term, but fabric or whatever, mesh, put through the chain link. What's the term? Slabs.
Slats, or is it just a fabric? What do you use about slats? It's just the fabric from a chain link fence.
No, not fabric. What's the term I'm thinking about? Slats. Yes. Yeah. And of course, there'll be the signs.
Well, I wasn't concerned about the sign. I was concerned about, is there something inherent in the design of the fence that would address the problem that the board has raised? I mean, how easy is it? I mean, if you have these slats, can a kid get his hands and feet in there to get over? And is there a design that is more efficient than what you have that would prevent that?
Not being an engineer, just being an environmental consultant, I don't know about fence design other than, as I said, this is the fence we've used in other projects and has been acceptable to DEP.
Have you ever used privacy slats in a wetland area? The concern I would have, if it blocks light, then I don't... The point I'm making is that there is fabric. When I say fabric, I mean the actual mesh, the diamond-shaped mesh and the chain link fence. There is the anti-climbing, which is a much more smaller gauge, or not a gauge, but the smaller space in the mesh that you can't stick your feet in. It affects your ability to climb the fence. But I would just review it maybe with your engineer to be sure that you can put privacy slats in a wetland area, because I think it blocks light. It may be an issue. I don't know from a land use regulation standpoint if it would present a problem. From your standpoint, I'm sure it works, but something you should look into.
Mr. Lang, perhaps ask him if he has any insight to shed on that.
Sure. I don't believe that I understand the concern, and certainly a fence with privacy slats would cast a shadow, but it's still not totally impervious to light, so I don't believe that would be an issue. But notwithstanding that, I do agree with Mr. Valesi, a no-climb or anti-climb fence, similar to what you see around a pool oftentimes, certainly another possibility. Arguably, it might be even more aesthetically pleasing because it may tend to disappear a little bit more in the background. So that would be another option to go with. I think they both accomplish the mission of resisting someone climbing over it. We're probably more preferential, I think.
Okay. Anybody have anything?
Yeah, I think my objection, or the objection, I won't speak for Mr. Pine, but I believe the objection is not aesthetics, it's health. That isn't being, you're not answering that by aesthetically changing the fence.
Yeah, again, that's part of the remediation process, and in fact, your own LSRP has issued a review of this application, and perhaps I could have it marked.
If you'd like.
It's February 9th, 2012 report from Excel Environmental Resources, Inc.
A11.
That would be A11, Mr. Oberlander.
This one.
A11, and this is the one that was given to us at the last meeting. And again, as I'll read from it. Excel finds this approval consistent with the remedial action work plans and NJDEP regulations with regard to protectiveness and human health and the environment. So it's not just our witness, it is the environmental consultant that the town has hired to protect its interest in this agrees with the approach we have used. And it's an approach not that was developed for our site, it's an approach that's accepted in remediation in New Jersey.
Are you reading from the letter of, what's the date of this letter?
It's on the back, second page has a date on it, February 9th, 2012.
Yeah, that's the same letter, but if you read paragraph number 2, it says justification should be provided to support fencing versus excavation of contaminated soil, and a more detailed description of the signage and fencing specifications should be provided. I don't think you've addressed that. I don't think you really have justified the use of the fence, nor have you provided specifications or details of the sign.
Well, to the extent he's saying
Mr.
that
Chair?
this board...
I think it's probably instructive at this point to also go back to condition number 5 of our final site plan approval. And essentially what that condition provides, and it was worked out with the applicant at that time, is that issues of the strategy for the site remediation would be submitted to the township's LSRP for a determination as to whether that LSRP agreed or not, and then there's a procedure that's worked out if they don't agree. I don't read the letter that we got from our LSRP to be his endorsement or not an endorsement of the process, so I think whatever the board decided to do tonight, it would still be subject to condition number 5 of the final approval and the township's LSRP if he or she believed that there was a significant safety concern or had a better way to achieve the remediation in that area. They could say, no, I don't agree with this procedure, and in which case they would have to work it out with the DEP. So I think that one of the options the board has tonight is simply to say that condition number 5 still exists. These are our concerns. There were concerns raised by the LSRP. The LSRP will take a look at it as a condition of whatever we do. And if he does not agree, then it'll go to the next level. I did have one other question, Mr. Chair, and this is does not represent an endorsement from the board, just a question from me. Understanding the nature of the board's concerns, I think, Mr. Lang, you testified there is an alternate design for the fence that could be used to make climbing more difficult.
There's an alternate to also accomplish the same mission that the privacy slats would accomplish. So yes. But it's not that it's more or somehow more resistant to climbing.
Well, but that was my question when I asked it first. I said, is there a design that's out there that is more effective at preventing climbing than the one that's used? Not, is there one that's different but equally as effective? Is there one that's more effective that's out there?
I think to achieve, it wouldn't be a switching of the fabric or changing that aspect of the fence. It would either be increasing the height of the fence or adding some kind of a control on top, such as barbed wire or something like that. I won't comment on whether or not that makes sense.
I don't think we're looking to teach. I don't think we're looking to teach kids that kind of lesson. But
you've got to be kidding. Barbed wire? Give me a.
But one of my other questions, Mr. Lang, is you're sort of at the edge of the wetlands area with the fencing, correct?
I'll defer to Mr. Paul.
Okay. Is there? And this is sort of my own term that I've named it. Is there some kind of like hostile vegetation that we could put, around the wetlands area, sort of in the wetlands area, something thorny or something like that, that would provide an extra measure of discouragement to
In addition to the fence, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure we could work with one of Mr. Lang's landscape architects and come up with some kind of vine or planting, a wetland-tolerant species that could accomplish that goal.
And again, that's not to say that that's what this board wants, but I'm just trying to identify options that are out there. But I will just leave the board with, we still have condition number 5, and the ultimate arbiter, I would say, of condition number 5 still would have to weigh in, even, post a decision here.
I agree. And what Mr. Cucchiaro said, and Mr. Pine also, when you go to 1, where it says Exhibit B, if you read, authorization is granted for disturbance of the wetlands in order to remediate contaminated soil and/or install fencing and signage.
Correct.
So it gives you the ability to go both ways.
Yes, we have the option to go either way, subject to getting all required approvals from DEP and the LSRP.
So we're trying to do our due diligence to say, why are we not excavating? And we're understanding what Mr. Paul's saying. I mean, and I have complete command of this English language, but I'm not there yet, that we have done everything that we could do.
Well, again, sir, my suggestion is that you make your thoughts known to your LSRP, because there is a procedure, and you set forth at length in your resolution for the preliminary approval that, that it's in the jurisdiction of the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection. The board therefore finds it is without jurisdiction to deny this application based on environmental status or remediation process. And again, the decision of whether or not to use a fence is not one for this board. That's one to be made in connection with the remediation process. I'm not saying that the town has no forum in which they can express their opinion. What I'm saying is it's not for the planning board at a site plan hearing to do it. Planning board site plan hearing, if we have the DEP permit for the fence, which we have, then I believe can only be concerned with site plan issues regarding the fence. Things have been discussed, the size, the color, the slats, those kind of things. But the decision of whether a fence is warranted or should be used or not is just something that's not within the jurisdiction of the planning board. And again, it's your own resolution makes that very clear, and your solicitor has made that very clear to you.
I disagree. It says here, the use of a fence would require an amended site plan approval. Right. That's us.
Right.
It says right in the resolution. Ron, do we have the authority to require a fence or not require a fence? He's saying we don't. He says it's the DEP has control over that.
The board can't, and this is developed through a lot of case law, the board can't weigh in on an issue that a different agency has exclusive jurisdiction over. The issue of how the site is going to be remediated doesn't lie with the town or the board. We don't have an ordinance on it. The hallmark of jurisdiction of a planning board is, does it relate to some ordinance that the town has or some authority that the municipal land use law has given it. We don't regulate these things, but to the extent it has an impact on site improvements, certainly that's within our jurisdiction. And the board may recall during the preliminary and final approval, there were a lot of questions regarding the cap. Now, the board doesn't have jurisdiction over what the cap's going to look like, but the board had jurisdiction over, does that cap impact the detention basin? Does it impact the location of the buildings, the internal driveways and parking lots? So we were able to get at it from that angle. But what the board did was, and I think it was responsible when it did this, it ensured a continuing role for the municipality, for the governing body's LSRP, which is to review it. So what I'm saying is this board wouldn't accept necessarily that a fence is proper, and if you wanted, the resolution could even express that the board was dissatisfied and requests pursuant to Section 5 that the LSRP take a look at it to make sure that it is the best way to remediate the process. But I think condition number 5, because we are not empowered by an ordinance or a statute or a case that says we can deny something based upon the level or the strategy for remediation. Condition number 5 is how you get at it. And we place our faith in our own professional, which is the township's LSRP, to take a look at it. But I agree with you absolutely, Mr. Pine, that the township's LSRP didn't say, yes, this is how he would do it. He said this is a way to do it, but he did not, accept this as exclusively the way to do it.
Well, the applicant's counselor, if I misunderstood pardon me, but I think you're saying the decision is not even with our own LSRP, it's with the DEP. But the fact
No,
is...
sir, that's not what I said.
Oh, okay, then clarify that for me, please.
The decision is not with this board. The decision is made as part of the remediation process. And Township, through its council, and through the LSRP, who I assume was retained by council, has a role in that process. And if you have a position, you can assert it through that process, which is envisioned by that condition 5. It just is not a basis for approval or denial of a site plan. Listen, if there's other approvals we need in the remediation, those are other hurdles we're going to have to go over before we do this. Your site plan approval, respectfully, I believe, has to be given because it's consistent with your ordinance. There's no provision in your ordinance that prohibits us from doing what we want. We were allowed to build 6-foot-high fence here, and we're proposing a 6-foot-high fence. It's not too close to the right-of-way. It's not too tall. It's completely consistent with your ordinance, and I think, with all respect, under New Jersey law, you have to approve it. That does not mean that you can't participate in other forums if there are other approvals that we need. I'm not asking you to say you like it or you support it or you agree with it or that you won't oppose it in a different forum. All I'm doing is respectfully telling you that it's not an issue for the site plan to consider. For the planning board to consider in review of a site plan.
Mr. Chair, I would look at it somewhat differently, that because of condition number 5, it's not something necessarily that we approve or deny. It's something that we condition upon our LSRP taking a look at and approving, and if the LSRP doesn't approve, that it be worked out with the DEP.
So if that's the route we ultimately elect to go, how would you advise we proceed with the approval or disapproval of the site plan at tonight's meeting?
You can take a vote on their new sidewalk proposal. That's dispositive. You could take a vote on the sign, that's dispositive. And just like any other outside agency approval, let's assume you were to vote that you approve those 2 other things. Then it would be for approval with the condition that we get something from our LSRP indicating that he approves this, or that they ultimately work out our LSRP's disagreement with the DEP. We either need something from our LSRP or from the DEP, because that's the process, agreeing with this. So it's kind of like an outside agency approval. They wouldn't be able to move forward until they got one of those things.
I mean, again, Exhibit A11, I think, is about as clear as it could be. Excel finds this approval consistent with the remedial action
Mr.
workplace
Oberlander,
plan and NJDP regulations with regard to protectiveness to human health and the environment.
what I'd say is, if you're right, then the process will take almost no time at all, because we'll get something from the LSRP saying, explicitly, planning board, you didn't read my stuff you didn't read my stuff close enough the first time around. I'm okay with this. So if you're right, then the process will be very rapid.
But I don't think the planning board can, whatever rights you have under the law to object to this,
We're not
it's exercised.
We're not.
I don't think that has any.
We're not objecting or anything like that. What we're saying is we have condition number 5. Ultimately, that decision is going to rest with our LSRP, and that's a condition of this approval as well. If the LSRP is okay with it, you get it.
It's a condition of the approval, that's fine. That condition 5, there's nothing in this application that was going to change condition 5 and...
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. So this board would not approve the fence. It's subject to the, because it's part of the remediation, it's subject to the approval of our LSRP.
But, no, with all respect, I think you have to approve the fence. You can't not approve it.
I
You
understand.
can approve it subject to our getting, again...
I understood your position the last 3 times, Mr. Oberlander. I just don't agree.
I don't understand how you analogize it to an outside agency approval. You can't say you're not going to vote on it because we need county planning board approval or because we need wetlands approval or something.
I'm saying because your client agreed to condition number 5, Mr. Oberlander. It says that our LSRP is going to make decisions as to whether the remediation is proper or he would recommend something else. So it's still conditioned upon that.
I mean, I don't think that's an accurate...
I know you don't, Mr. Oberlander. You've said it 5 times, and I'm going to disagree with you the next...
I haven't addressed whether your summary of condition 5 was accurate or not.
You said it's not accurate. You can say, go ahead, you can say it's not accurate again.
We understand your position completely.
Okay. Well, Ms. Schwager, who has also testified before, would like to address this, with the board's permission.
Mr. Chairman, Jack, I was just thinking about something. Maybe we should have Mr. Marnie, I guess it is, Marini, or LSRP, at our next meeting if we postpone this till then. Let him expand on his letter that he drafted to us. Might be a good idea that we might have some questions for him.
Well, that's the point.
Need an extension.
Ms. Schwager? Can I just make one comment, Jack, if I may, just before you testify? The resolution that this is all based upon says that any fence would require an amended site plan approval.
Right.
Well, who's the approval coming from? That's us.
Exactly.
So why do you say we don't have the right to approve it or disapprove it?
No, that's not at all what I've said. I've said you do it, the site plan approval comes before this board, but in making your decision on the site plan, you cannot consider issues that involve the merits of the remediation, because that is to be decided in another forum.
Well,
you have to decide based on your site plan ordinance.
Mr. Oberlander's take is that we
Okay.
can pick the color, we can pick the style, we
Yeah.
can pick the slatting, we can do all that, but we don't have jurisdiction. We understand it.
Pound 5.
Well, apparently, Mr. Pine asked me a question on it.
Yeah, that's
so
quite right.
Perhaps he did not understand it.
Yeah, thank you. I don't agree with it, our attorney doesn't agree with your position on this, so.
We're not going to swear. Go ahead, ma'am. Were you sworn in at the last meeting?
I was. So, a couple of things, because I was here last time. What this says is that...
By this, you mean?
What the final site plan resolution number 5 says, and there was a lot of discussion at the final site plan hearing. What that says is that in the event of a disagreement, we would argue first that there's not a disagreement, but I'm not going to go there anymore. At this point, and I was at the final site plan and I was at the preliminary, there was very clear discussion and a lot of discussion as to what environmental discussions can happen as it relates. And we spent a lot of time talking about, does what we're talking about change the location of the buildings, change the locations of the sidewalk, change the locations of any material aspects? And the answer was no, and still is no. We have presented here tonight a request to put a fence up, which we are allowed under our GP4 to do. We have a permit from the DEP. The GP4 is for brownfields remediation. That's what it's for within the wetlands. The DEP has already determined that having a fence in the wetlands is a allowable approach. Our LSRP has, and remember we went rounds and rounds of this as well, our LSRP has testified many times that he is, at the end of the day, the person that has to determine. We're happy to have the conversation. In fact, I had expected, as Mr. Green had said at the last meeting, I had expected that consultant to be here this evening, and we had our environmental consultant here to have that conversation. We assumed that the reason he wasn't here tonight, because I think that his response was actually very clear, and we can go back and forth. There is a forum here, which, whether we agreed to it or not, it was in the resolution. That the two LSRPs will have a conversation. We encourage that conversation to occur because we believe it's going to come out exactly as written and as allowed for in our GP4 permit. We have a permit for a fence from the Department of Environmental Protection. We have a fence here this evening that is compliant with your ordinance, to height, to color, to shape. If you'd like us to make it taller or shorter or put something in it, I'm happy to have that conversation. For example, we're not required to put a sign on the fence, but we're putting it there because we believe it should be there. We're not trying to do anything different, but there will be, and as my environmental consultant says, impacts to the wetlands if we continue to do this. Big trucks going through the wetlands. If I was here with an environmentalist, they'd say, oh my God, you're going to destroy the wetlands. So we're here tonight to talk about the fence. If you want it blue, green, purple, orange, what you want in it, I'm happy to have that conversation. You want it 8 feet instead of 6 feet, I'm happy to have that conversation. It's not allowed for within your ordinance, but if it's what you want, okay. So, but our approval is what we have at this point. We have a GP4, which is for brownfield remediation in the wetland. That's what we have. The DEP has approved. This is, the DEP shall resolve it. The DEP has resolved it. They issued us a permit. But we're happy to have that conversation with your LSRP. I've never said we wouldn't, and we've never received a call to them to date. We are through most of our remediation. We're at the last piece of it at this point. So we're happy to have that conversation. But tonight, the vote is on the fence. And that's what I'd ask you to consider this evening.
Well, I mean, I appreciate the applicants telling us what we have to do, but I would encourage the board to do the right thing. And if the applicant is not satisfied, there are certain legal remedies and paths you can take, and that's certainly your option. The question I had for the LSRP, though, was when you were making your judgment about whether or not to remove or fence, is cost a factor that you are allowed to use in your determination?
I don't know whether I'm allowed to use it or not, but I did not use it.
So I'm assuming the DEP, you said the DEP has standards for how you make this decision. It's the health, welfare, and safety of...
Human health, safety, and the environment.
So I guess cost isn't one of those four.
And I didn't consider cost.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what's tough for me, and I don't know if I've got my finger on the pulse of the board or not, but again, I mean, if it's a question of human safety versus possible disturbance of wetlands, I tend to lean towards human safety. So, you know, I don't believe our LSRP answered that question. I mean, frankly, we haven't asked him that question to that level of detail. So I'd be curious to hear another professional's judgment as to what the best way to remediate this is. Well, I shouldn't even say that. The best way to remediate it is to move it, is to remove it all. I mean, that seems obvious. So if we're not using the best route to remediate, there should be a pretty good reason as to why we're not. And that might be the sticking point here.
I don't know that removing it is necessarily the best route to remediate it, because again, like in anything, there's pros and cons. And if this was just a grass field or some less sensitive environment, sure, we dig it out. And cost wasn't an issue here. The amount of money that my client has spent in remediating this site, this would have been a decimal point. This would be a decimal point. Believe me, cost is absolutely not an issue. But there is a trade-off that by going in to remove it, there would be damage to the wetlands, 1.5 acres of wetlands. And I can tell you since the enactment of the Freshwater Wetlands Protection Act in 1989, and I've been active with the DEP in that area as well. I was on the original Freshwater Wetlands Advisory Committee with the NJDEP. I can tell you the DEP would consider adverse impacts, however you want to define them, to 1.5 acres of wetlands to be extremely significant, extremely significant. And if you know anything about the wetland permitting program in New Jersey, all of the permits have a upper limit of 1 acre. Most of the permits, or many permits, have upper limits of less than 1 acre. There's no general permit you can get, essentially, that has impacts greater than 1 acre. And you get federal jurisdiction involved under the Clean Water Act from the Corps of Engineers. 1.5 acres of wetland disturbance is very significant. So there was a trade-off here. And as I testified earlier and last time, there's a point of diminishing returns to get out the last bits of soil, very low levels, versus not destroying, but damaging the wetlands, versus putting up a fence. I felt, in my professional opinion, that this was protective of human health, safety, and the environment. And frankly, when I read your consultant's letter from Excel, I didn't see any disagreement there, and that seems to be the word in the condition of the ordinance, of the approval rather, sorry. I didn't see any disagreement whatsoever. And I don't think, and obviously I was part of all the conversations at the approval process, I don't think there was ever any intention that the township's LSRP, if there was an issue or to view remediation, that he had to pick the best way of doing it. I think his job was to see if there was a disagreement over the way that was proposed. And I think this letter is pretty clear that there's no disagreement. If he had a disagreement, he would have said so. So now maybe to go back to him and say, do you have a disagreement, maybe isn't fair to my client either.
Jack, I have a quick question. When you went and got your permit approval from the DEP for the fence, did you give them the two alternatives? Yes, I'm addressing to you. Thank you so much. I forgot your last name.
Schwager.
Ms. Schwager. Did you say to them, we can either do the fence or we can remove the contaminated soil? Did you present that to them that way?
That's what's in the permit. The permit uses those words.
What permit?
the DEP permit that permits this.
It says, I don't have a copy of that, but... And they chose, out of the two alternatives, they chose the fence?
They didn't choose.
Oh, well, that's what I'm asking.
We choose. It says, right here, the permit authorizes up to 5 acres of hand removal of contaminated surface soil / fencing and deed restriction of contaminated portions of the wetlands remaining undeveloped on the site. So there was the option there, and the option was our option, based upon
But we had a lot of
the
discussion.
site conditions at the time that we encountered.
But we had a lot of discussion to get to that point.
A lot of discussion.
There was back and forth discussion, and I'll let Mr. Paul talk about it because he had the discussion, but I was involved with it. There was absolutely back and forth discussion with the DEP. How many acres do you want? How many acres do you think it could be? You know,
I mean, they authorized up to 5 acres. We're only talking about 1.5 acres of fencing.
Yet, I'm trying to track there. You're saying up to an acre becomes a big deal, and now they've authorized you to hand excavate 5 acres. That's kind of, okay. You can imagine for us tracking all of this stuff. You're
Yeah,
saying that
and
an
the
acre is a
reason-
big deal, and
and the reason-
DEP saying 5 is not.
And this goes to the numerous back and forth conversations and meetings that we had with Jan Arnett, who's the NJDEP wetlands reviewer who, you know, reviewed and issued this permit. Because she said to me, Ken, well, if you have to enact the fencing option, how big an area? I said, Jan, I don't know sitting here a year and a half ago. Because when you do site remediation, unlike maybe the more specific kinds of engineering, you don't know at the beginning all the time exactly where you're going to end up. Because it's an iterative process. When we dig out the soil, we take samples to demonstrate that we've removed all the soil, post-excavation samples, they're called, and you think you're going to go to this point, and maybe you go to that point. So you don't know at the beginning. So when I said to her, Jan, I don't know exactly how much area this might entail. She said, do you think 5 acres would be enough for me to put in the permit? I said, I think it'd be more than enough. Because based upon all the sampling, and if you remember the testimony I gave last year, we took over about 500 samples of PCBs across this site. So we really had a very good idea of what the situation there was. And in fact, here we are a year and a half later, we've completed all of the active remediation, and all our estimates have really been right on. I mean, and even this, we knew that it was going to extend into the wetlands. We thought we'd be able to get it by doing a little scraping by hand and not damaging the wetlands, not having a significant impact, not causing a big hole in the wetlands if we had to take down trees or vegetation. And we just got to the point of diminishing returns, and again, money was not an issue, because as I said earlier, this would be a decimal point in the budget. We thought this was the best way in consideration of all the factors.
Would you explain the PCBs? Will they diminish over time, or does it have a long life?
They don't diminish over time.
So
They're very stable.
if you took a test 10 years from now, the readings would be the same, which I'm doing the math, is
it could
basically
be
5 times where it should.
I'm sorry?
You're saying .02 or 0.2, and we have a reading of 1. We're about 5 times?
No.
Why don't you give me a time?
You don't have a reading of 1. You have an average within the 2 fenced areas. In one of the fenced areas, you have an average of like .8 or .9, and in the other area, you have an average of .5. So of all the samples that we took in there, we took maybe 20 or 30 samples. Within each of those fenced areas, we had zeros, we had .003s. I mean, we had numbers all over the place, but, you know, there was some that were a little higher, and that's why the average is what it was. The 0.2 is the residential standard.
Right, I got you.
Yeah.
I'm trying to follow you. So in order to have an average of 1, did you say we have an average of 1 inside there?
A little less than 1.
Okay, little less than 1. So there's areas that are going to come, you're saying are almost 0, and that means there's areas that are
There's some
higher.
samples that were a
And
little
that's the
higher.
reason you want to fence it, because, okay.
Yeah.
Trying to follow the logic behind it.
Excuse me. What kind of health hazards does this pose to somebody who does climb over the fence and the kids play around in there? Explain that to me,
The
please.
health hazard in this situation, or actually any situation with PCBs, is someone would have to ingest a huge amount of soil to have any adverse impacts. I mean, pounds of it.
Condition 7 of the final approval requires a disclosure statement to all prospective tenants. The disclosure statement shall advise prospective tenants of the deed restriction required by the NJDEP for the property. The disclosure language shall be consistent with the requirements of the NJDEP. Are you familiar with the disclosure language that the NJDEP requires?
We, as part of our final site plan approval, as part of our compliance, we had the language that was going to go in the lease approved by your solicitor. So at this point, the language has been approved. It was a compliance item in our report that had to be done.
So does that, in the event the fenced-in area is approved and is ultimately constructed, does the disclosure statement indicate information about existing PCBs on the property and the fenced-in remedy?
I actually don't remember what it says.
Well, what I can tell you is that the deed notice, which is separate from the disclosure statement to the residents, but I'm sure the residents will be provided a copy of the deed.
I think it says.
Yeah. The deed notice that's filed on this property with the county sets forth where the contamination remaining on the site is, what the contamination is, the concentrations, and it's a very detailed document, the form and the language of which is set forth by the NJDEP.
Mr. Chair, my recollection, because we did go through this, is part of resolution compliance, and CME and I went back and forth a lot with the applicant on language because we weren't satisfied with that disclosure language initially. I'd have to look at it again, but I don't think it contemplated the use of the fence. So if the board were to act affirmatively, we'd have to take another look at that disclosure language, and if it needed to be tweaked, we would tweak it.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Anything else you need to say to us before we get to where we are? Anybody want to take, let's go this way. I should open the public, right?
Yes.
We're going to have to. Anybody in the public wishing to address this board on these issues or question the applicant or the professionals? Come forward. Anybody? Come on forward.
You have to come up to the microphone.
You have to come up.
If you want to speak.
No? Pass on that. Anybody? Seeing none, we'll close public. Professionals, you want to give us any advice before we go doing this? Okay.
Mr. Chair, just to bring us back to the beginning, the applicant had requested, and if the board wants to, the board has a couple options. If you want to just take someone make a motion overall, which could either be to approve everything, to deny everything, or to approve one of the three, two of the three, you could do that. Or if you wanted to go one by one, you could do that also. It's up to the board.
Could I just, one?
Okay, you go first, and mine will be second. Go ahead.
Okay, before the board deliberates and votes, that, again, I know we've had a lot of discussion on this, but our expert has testified regarding the acceptability of the procedure. The second expert that was retained by the township and specifically requested to review this application has language that says it meets the regulations with regard to protectiveness to human health and the environment. And thirdly, the DEP has granted us the permit. DEP granted us a permit which would allow us to use more than 3 times space that we are, fence in more than 3 times the space at more than 10 times the concentration. So we're really doing a very, very small percentage, both in terms of area and in terms of concentration, of what DEP has authorized us to do. And lastly, I would emphasize again that the township can act through whatever forms available to it, those under this agreement or otherwise. If you have a position, we're not asking the township to say they like it or they won't oppose it. We're just saying that it's not an issue for the planning board. Thank you.
Your position is very clear, at least to me.
If we did make an approval on the remediation, could we make it predicated on the outcome of the arbitration between the two LSRPs?
Well, I wouldn't call it arbitration, but there's still They've not sought relief from condition 5. So all of the conditions of the prior approval still remain. If you wanted to, I would reiterate that condition number 5, still remains, and that our LSRP has to agree, or, the process laid out in that condition will have to be exhausted. But yes, we can do that.
Okay, discussion among the board. Should we vote on these individually, break them into 3 pieces?
Let's do the sign and the...
Okay, the order, how about the sign, sidewalk, and then the fencing? Does that work? The order's good with everybody? Chief, you have a thought on that? Okay. Okay, we have...
To approve the sign.
Everybody knows what they've submitted and what they want to build for a sign, remember?
I make a motion that we accept the sign the way it's been presented to us.
I second.
Is this
Mr.
for
Chair,
a
does it-
positive resolution, or is this?
Make a motion for a positive resolution.
It's up to the board. What I would say to the board, I've said it before, in my legal opinion, it's really a distinction without difference, because if you don't have to accept the resolution that I write once you vote. I mean, if you want it to be changed, it could be changed. So, most boards I represent, they just vote yes or no, and there's a memorializing resolution. But technically, the hearing's not over if you vote for a positive resolution. And in this case, we might even need, I think we would probably need to ask for an extension of time because of that, because the time runs out. But if you wanted to, you could, authorize a positive or a negative resolution. But just remember, you're not locked into my language if you vote yes or no. If when you see the resolution, we can always change it.
Are you suggesting that we vote it all together, all 3?
No.
No. The question was, should we vote just affirmatively to approve or deny, or should we vote just to authorize me to draft a resolution that we'll take a look at? And what I'm saying is, I don't find that there's any advantage really to authorizing me to draft a resolution in any case, because you always have the ability to, review my work, and if you don't, if you have additions or deletions, we can do it. So, that's my counsel. It's up to you.
So who made the original motion? Which do you prefer? Which motion did you make?
On the sign, I made a motion that we approve the sign as it has been presented to us.
There you go. Is that what you second, Mr.?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, just
That's
to
what I
clarify,
seconded.
that would include the variance that was requested in connection with that?
Yes.
Yes.
Vote for the sign. Tom.
Yes.
Chief Hogan.
Yes.
Chairman McNamara.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Howard.
Yes.
Committee Man Green.
No.
Mr. Mendez.
Yes.
Mr. Aronson. Yes. I vote yes.
Okay.
Make a motion.
Now we have the sidewalk, and we have 2 different ways we can go with the sidewalk, right? Don, you want to lay out the one, or are you comfortable laying out what you said before? Would you like to do it again?
Well, we actually have 3 options for the sidewalk.
We have well, you can give me the third one. The one was to take the money. Do we have a predetermined number? How do you want to?
There's a formula that the township has, so it will be worked out pursuant to that formula. We wouldn't get into the numbers here.
But that option is to build nothing.
No, we built
Correct.
the
Take
wetlands.
that money and put it in.
Right. So basically, the option Mr. Holland identified, which is to make a contribution in lieu of construction. The second is the boardwalk, or the third is you just vote to deny and compel them to stick with the original.
We would build it up to the wetlands if the board wanted to. It's not that we would, you can have us build up the sidewalk up to the wetlands and just put that part in the fund, or you could have us build none, whichever. We're fine with either of those.
I mean, the relief we've asked tonight is to just dispense with the transition area and the wetlands. If you want us to dispense with the rest of it, that's fine, too.
Okay.
I guess your other option is well, no, I guess that pretty much covers.
Yes.
Okay.
I would like to propose a resolution for approval of the sidewalk construction over the
Wetlands area.
And the material would be?
Well, I think the engineer has answered. I'm satisfied using the treated wood if Greg feels that that's going to do the job. Yeah. Okay. Then I don't have a problem with the treated wood. That's my proposal for a positive resolution for the sidewalk.
Well, now, here's my problem. You can't authorize me to, draft a final resolution on some of it, authorize me to draft just a resolution on, because now we're getting into multiple resolutions, and I suppose I could do that, but I would really counsel consistency one way or the other, that it all be part of a motion to, one motion to actually take a dispositive vote tonight, or that it be part of a motion to just draft a resolution, not...
So if I may, a resolution either A, to build a sidewalk, or B, put it in the fund, period.
Or to deny. Right.
I don't understand, you don't want to accept the sidewalk construction? I don't...
No. Mr. Pine, what I'm saying is, the motion that was made for the sign was to approve it, period. Your motion was to draft a positive resolution for the sidewalk. So I'm saying is, I think this board should vote to approve or deny, period, with all three, or to authorize a resolution with all three.
So since we've already approved outright, it would make sense to either approve or deny the sidewalk outright.
Right.
Since we already had the sign approved.
Since we already started down that road, we should stay on that road.
Instead of a positive,
So
vote to approve
the sidewalk.
construction of the sidewalk.
Okay, so I make a motion to approve construction of the sidewalk in the area that's being discussed.
And again, Mr. Chairman, to clarify, that's the boardwalk sidewalk.
The boardwalk sidewalk over
Yeah,
top
okay.
of the wetland.
I second that.
This is for the sidewalk. All right. Seconded by Mr. Anderson. Vote. Mr. Cohen.
Yes.
Chief Hogan.
Yes.
Chairman McIntyre.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Holland.
No.
Committeeman Green.
Yes.
Mendez.
Yes.
Mr. Aronson. Yes. And Mr. Pine votes yes. That's it.
Okay. Now lastly,
I would make a motion to draft a resolution that states something to the degree that, this is a, well, however you want to, I'll leave it to Ron, to put something together that states that it's contingent upon Article 5 of the original resolution wherein our LSRP, no? Oh, you're shaking your head. Our LSRP has to come up with some decision that is acceptable to all parties, and how do you want to state this, Ron?
So it sounds like you're making a motion to approve the proposed fencing conditioned upon condition 5 of the final approval.
I would use the word approve.
Well,
Accept or
Accept versus approve.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think, Ron?
Well, it's not what if I could help clarify the motion, it would be a motion to conditionally approve the use of the fence subject to the approval of the township's LSRP, and if that approval from the township's LSRP is not given, then you can't satisfy the condition. And they have to move forward through the DEP process. So it's a conditional approval. They don't gain a right to do anything by it until our LSRP endorses it or the DEP comes in and resolves it.
Mr. Kutch, are you saying something different than approving subject to the township's ability to exercise its rights under?
I'm saying exactly what I just said.
But is-
I'm not...
I need to understand, sir, if you're modifying condition 5 or if you're...
I'm not modifying condition 5.
So you're approving subject to the township exercising its rights under condition 5. That's what your language...
You can frame it however you want, Mr. Overlander. I'm trying to tell you that it's a conditional approval and that it requires our township's LSRP to approve this, and if he doesn't approve it, it's a condition that's not satisfied, and they have to move up the ladder to the DEP.
It's different than 5. It is. Mr. Kuchera, respectfully, condition 5 is, even my reading of condition 5 is different than what you're saying. You're saying that...
Mr. Chair,
yeah,
I appreciate...
For a second here. We pay this man to give us his legal opinion. He has given us yours. We've given you more than ample time to explain yours as well. At some point, we have to agree to disagree, right? So we have a professional that is giving us an opinion, and we are listening to his opinion,
Also, just
as we've listened to yours.
From procedural standpoint, Mr. Chair, also, the applicant is represented by counsel, and counsel can make the legal objections here. And counsel's made those legal objections. I respect them. I understand them. I don't agree. And, you know, you can talk to me all night, and still respect your legal opinion, and I don't agree. And I can tell you, I'm going to put your disagreement in the resolution, so that it is codified. You know, if anyone who likes to wear robes during the day has to take a look at this. So, you know, but you're not changing my opinion. So, with that said, I think Mr. Pine was trying to make his motion, which was to approve subject to condition number 5 as I have, condition number 5 as I have laid it out. Is that?
I still don't like the word approve, but is there another word we can use? Accept?
Not deny? I don't know. I mean, it's a conditional approval, so it's not, it doesn't give them an as-of right to do anything.
That's...
And I'll make that clear.
Okay, thank you so much.
I second Mr. Pine.
Yeah.
Everybody understood what Mr. Kuchera has stated, so we're all clear on the resolution. All right. I moved it for second by Mr. Mendez. Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Chief Hogan?
No.
Chairman McNamara?
No.
Deputy Mayor Howell?
Yes.
Committeeman Green?
No.
Mr. Mendez?
Yes.
Mr. Aronson? Yes. Pine votes yes. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 yeses, 5 yeses.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This time, I'd like to open to the public. Anybody wishing to address this board on any issues not heard here tonight?
Eleanor?
Anybody?
Don't put this on.
Wait, Susan's raising her hand.
After that.
You were blocked.
For next week, I gotta...
Come on up.
Just so.
The master plan meeting.
Pick up a microphone whenever you speak.
The bad one?
We do. Well, you don't need to be sworn in, but there is a tape.
Should be. It was.
Susan, for a couple people in town that do not know you, would you introduce yourself?
You can sit at the you can sit at the table also. I mean, if you want.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would just...
We just need to make sure you're on, hold on. We need to make sure you're on tape. Go ahead.
Okay. My name is Susan Hergenrother.
And just, again, you just...
13 Greenfield Road, Manalapan, New Jersey.
And to spell your name.
Hergenrother.
Okay.
Can you explain to us what happened here tonight?
Which part?
The part about... No, no, I don't know.
Going back to the memorialization of the master plan?
Yes.
Okay.
We've all waited to get a little bit more of an explicit explanation for what happened and a little bit more into depth about, I know we were not, we heard of a memo, we were not privy to the memo, but many of us, if not all, have never done this before. And we would just like an explanation
Chair,
about procedure.
I can handle that.
Here you go.
The board took an action, and we discussed the action at the last meeting. The municipal land use law requires us to memorialize that action in a resolution. Only the people who voted in favor of the motion get to vote on the resolution. So tonight, Mr. Holland would not be eligible, Committeeman Green would not be eligible, Chairman McNamara would not be eligible, Mr. Mendez, you would be eligible, would not be eligible, that's right, and Both of our alternates would not be eligible. So the only eligible people would be Mr. Cohen and Chief Hogan. So only 2 of the 5 that are eligible to vote are here tonight. We can do that under the law, but the board felt it was more prudent to have everybody here who voted to make sure that the resolution was what they all, wanted to see. So it was a function of the fact that we only had 2 people here tonight who were eligible to vote. The board's not at liberty not to memorialize that action. So that action has to be memorialized. So it'll be memorialized at our next.
And when did we? I was trying to hear when the next meeting is.
April 12th.
April 12th.
Now,
Thursday of next week.
as to, I wrote a letter to the board explaining voting requirements, different options for voting, the legal ramifications. That's attorney-client privilege under the Open Public Records Act. It's not, because it's a privileged document with their attorney, it's not open to the public. What I can tell you...
I thought we were your clients as well, because we're all
the
same town.
No. I serve the board, which is the body politic. It's a municipal corporation. That is the client and the...
I'm just saying, had I thought we were 2 separate entities, I might not have made the request, but I thought of us all as the same.
Well, here's, I think I can help everyone to understand why it is that the law is set up like that. Let's suppose a member of the community sued this board. It's not a prudent way to operate that the person suing the board gets to come in and gets to get all of our litigation strategy and gets the benefit of, frank conversations that are held in executive session. So the law provides the board or a governing body or any public body with the ability to discuss legal issues either in executive session, which is outside the view of the public, and the documents drafted by its attorney regarding legal issues are privileged.
Okay.
So, but what I can tell you, and I think it should give you a measure of confidence, is I anticipate that when the vote comes around, I'm going to be asked about it. And most of what I've put in that memo, I will probably wind up advising them, this board, in public anyway. But procedurally, that's where we are and how we got here.
Okay. And am I allowed to ask what happens after you memorialize that vote? Does it just... I can't... It's then law, or whatever? I mean, or does it go from here to back to the township committee?
No, the township committee doesn't get to approve or disapprove this document. What the township committee can do, if it pleases, is take the document and draft ordinances based upon the document. But this is a document that's exclusively within the jurisdiction of this board, so its vote is the vote. As to what else happens after, I don't know.
So this is the final decision, that was the final decision on auto dealerships?
No, this is the final, this is the final decision on that master plan process. Any future board or could take up the issue again if they wanted to, but it would again have to be with public hearings, public notice, and...
Mr. Kujiro, can I ask a question that might clarify the issue? Does the township committee have to follow the master plan?
The township committee, if it wanted to, could introduce an ordinance that was not consistent with the master plan, but there's different voting requirements. If a ordinance is inconsistent with the master plan, it has to be adopted by a majority of the full authorized membership, which means 3 members. And it doesn't matter how many people show up. If a majority of the full authorized membership is 3. So if 3 people show up, they'd all
Doesn't have to be a supermajority.
Well, a supermajority comes into play under the protest provision of the municipal land use law, which is different. That's not council-driven, that's property owner-driven. So it's possible, if the numbers are there, that something like that could require a supermajority. It doesn't inherently require a supermajority. The other thing that the governing body has to do, if it is not consistent with the master plan, is adopt a resolution which states the reasons why they are adopting an ordinance which is inconsistent with the master plan.
And the views of the planning board.
Well, that is the master plan is the view of the planning board.
Okay.
That is the
Okay.
policy, that document is the policy of the planning board.
Okay. Does anyone else here have a question that I have not asked? Okay.
I'll handle
I'm
that.
leaving.
Okay.
Thank you.
But thanks for the help. Anybody else any other members of the public wishing to address the board, come forward?
I have one fast question. Do I have to?
We're going to have your name.
If you can go up to that mic, ma'am.
Okay.
And take a seat if you'd like. Just, if you could give us your name, spell it, and give us your address.
Lori Schertz, SCHERTZ, 26 Greenfield Road. My question is, I know that there are 2 reasons why someone can change their vote on memorialization. One is that they didn't understand what it was, and the second one was what? What's the second reason?
Well, first of all, that's not exactly correct. You can never
Okay.
change your vote.
You can't.
Your vote is your vote. What you can do, if there are instances of fraud, misrepresentation, or mistake, someone can make a motion for reconsideration. But it can't just be a motion for reconsideration, based on anything. You have to
Okay.
show that there was some fraud in the process, someone lied, misrepresentation, someone said something that's not true, or a mistake of fact or law, which is, you thought something and, somehow it turned out not to be the case, or you didn't understand something.
Okay.
But you'd have to have one of those 3 in
Okay.
order to reconsider. But you can't undo, you still have to memorialize the act that you took. So there are multiple stages if you want to do that. You still have to memorialize the action that you took, because that's the action that you would have to reconsider.
Good. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other members of the public?
Tom Madden, 8 Dickinson Lane, Manalapan.
Okay, sir, could you say your name again?
I'm sorry?
State your name again, please.
Tom Madden.
Okay.
I just had a question from watching the tape of the last planning board meeting, and by the way, thank you for starting to tape that and televise it. It's very helpful. It seems like there's a meeting in April about soliciting new ideas for modifications to the master plan. Is there a reason, since one of the underlying themes of this has been not to change the master plan and to use uses that are already there?
That's not a theme of this board. As a matter of fact, the municipal land use law requires a reexamination of the master plan every so often. It's not supposed to be a static document. And we can't just say to someone in the community, we are going to reject you out of hand. We don't want to listen to you at all. That's a violation of their due process. Right. Anyone has a right to come up here if they, satisfy our ordinance requirements to talk to us. It doesn't mean we're compelled to mind you, this is not a hearing. These are people who are giving ideas, and the planning board has to determine whether they think any of those ideas have enough or are interesting enough that we would authorize our planner to put together a draft plan. So these are people saying, hey, I own a piece of property. This is what I think should happen in the zone. Board, if you think, if you are of the opinion that we should look into this, we'll have a master plan hearing. So what's happening in April doesn't change the master plan. These are people who are asking us to consider introducing an amendment to the master plan. And the law, our Constitution, doesn't permit us, and I would never counsel this board to reject anyone's comment just out of hand because we have some policy that the master plan is written in stone. It's just not what the law provides. So we have to listen, and if we think it's meritorious, we will introduce it, and everyone will have an opportunity to comment on it. We could take the position that none of it is meritorious, and we don't introduce anything.
Is this something that's been done every year? I mean, I haven't been that visible to this in past years.
It's driven in part by, it's driven in part by residents and property owners. We do it on our own on certain occasions. Other times, it's driven by local property owners who are asking us to consider something. And again, the municipal land use law considers the master plan a fluid document. It doesn't permit a board to make a blanket statement that it's never going to change. And we have an ordinance that allows for people to introduce concept plans to the planning board. So we can't tell someone that we're not going to do something that our ordinance allows them to do.
Right. But I mean, do you have that calling out of, let's do this every year, like doing a budget, for example? Has this happened the April before and the April before that?
No, not every year. Well, not necessarily. To tell you the truth, I know that we did a master plan amendment in 2009 towards the end. I don't know, did we do a master plan amendment in 2010, Mr. Kramer?
I believe that was the housing element amendment.
Yeah.
It was in 2010, that was the...
Well, that was 2009, I thought we did. Yeah, it was 2009. So we amended the housing element in 2009. I don't think we did anything in 2010, and this round was introduced in 2011. So, 3 of the last 4 years, we've been doing it. I don't have the institutional knowledge to know how many times we've done it, but I can tell you that the law, up until recently, required us to do it at least every 6 years to re-examine our master plan.
Mm-hmm. Okay. The other question I had, again, back to what I saw on TV last week, was there looking to reconsider the dealerships on 33, which is what I thought I heard, but I also heard that one of the reasons was not to have it on 33.
I don't think... No. When the motion was taken, there was discussion. I think Mr. Pine had discussion about putting car dealerships on Route 33. It wasn't anything that was proposed in our master plan amendment. We could have put it in there, but the board did not desire that. So the ultimate vote that the board took was that they didn't want to make car dealerships, they didn't want to recommend car dealerships in any zone.
And it's not going to be you memorialize this and then we start all over again the following month.
I can't tell you that because the law allows you to re-examine your master plan whenever you want. It would seem unlikely that the month after, I don't know.
But the board doesn't have an intention to reintroduce.
I don't know what the board has an intention to do or not. I don't.
Well, I guess
the board doesn't discuss these things, outside of this forum, really.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. But if the board wanted to, it could.
Mr. Madden, you were here while we discussed the Route 33. And just to clarify it for you, we did change the master plan there, if you remember. The SEDs, the SED20s were changed. The OPs were changed, which is Route 9. The OP3s were not. The OP10s were not.
Right.
Now, what we did was anything that wasn't on Route 9 and Route 33, there were many people came forward. The floodgates kind of opened. You were in the room for the first time. Many people were like that. So we didn't get too distracted. We didn't talk about anything that wasn't on 33 and 9.
Right.
Now those other people, that's what we're going to start hearing. As you come off 33 down towards Millhurst Mills, that area, there's people that want to pitch ideas to us, and that's what they're coming forward to do. So people will come by. You could very well find yourself as a business owner in this town with a piece of property that you want to do something different with. We listen to what you have to say. You saw that with the Katina dealership. It didn't happen, but he came in and he gave it a pitch, right? Other people have tried to do the same. Now we're going to start looking at Route 33 at least at the next meeting.
As you can appreciate, it's somewhat overwhelming if we were going to look at every single zone simultaneously. And quite frankly, I think for people in your community, they would have had to sit through a lot of things that really didn't pertain to them.
Right.
And I suspect it would have been frustrating.
Right.
To listen, for hours upon end about, someone wanting to change a setback requirement on Millhurst Road.
Right.
So out of deference and respect for the people who had come here, it was a very focused master plan hearing that really just, it expanded to the SED zone really at the request of the people who were here. But it was really something we were just looking at our OP zones. And, we want to take another targeted approach like that, moving into the future. It would have been never-ending hearings to do every zone in the town at the same time.
Right.
And
it just kind of seemed from the last bit of the tape that it was the possibility that there was interest in, and I don't recall who actually said it,
but
to restart again.
Absolutely, but the board didn't go with it.
Okay.
Yeah. It was absolutely discussed, and it was absolutely, at that time, rejected.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Any other members of the public? Are you coming forward, sir? Any other members of the public wishing to address this board? Seeing none? We close public. Anybody on the board have anything for the board? Would anybody like to make a motion?
I'll make it.
What motion would you like to make?
Close. I second.
Would anybody like to, all in favor?
Aye.
The West Texas town of El Paso, I fell in love with a Mexican girl. Nighttime would find me in Rose's Cantina, music would play and Felina would whirl. Blacker than night were the eyes